Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Empowered Edge podcast. Today we're going to talk about why burnout most often affects capable, responsible professionals and how rebuilding energy, structure and alignment restores performance. Burnout is something we hear about constantly, but I actually think it's often misunderstood. People tend to assume that burnout happens when someone just can't cope with the pressure. But in my experience, that's not what we usually see.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. A lot of the people we work with are actually really capable individuals. They're ambitious, responsible, usually doing well in their careers. And ironically, those are often the people who end up the most exhausted.
Exactly. It's rarely the person who lacks drive. It's usually the person who's been holding everything together for such a long time. So that might be a busy career, family life, training routine, and all the other responsibilities that come with adulthood. One pattern I notice a lot with burnout is personality. So the people it happens to tend to have similar traits. They're responsible, they hold themselves to high standards, and often they feel a strong sense of obligation to other people.
And they're also usually the people who say yes to everything. Yes to more work, yes to more responsibility, yes to helping everyone else.
Yeah, and I can totally resonate with that. And that over time creates a slow build-up of pressure. They're managing work, responsibilities, relationships, and somewhere along the way, they just stop managing themselves.
And that's when we start seeing the physical side of the change. Training becomes inconsistent, sleep starts slipping, recovery disappears, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, burnout isn't usually a sudden collapse of everything. It's a gradual erosion over time.
People rarely wake up one day burnt out. It's months, sometimes years, of slowly losing the habits that used to support them.
And quite often, people probably don't even realise that they are burnt out or that it's actually happened to them. And what's interesting is when people start burning out, it's not usually because they've suddenly become incapable. It's because the systems that used to support them have just quietly disappeared.
And the first thing that tends to disappear is movement. Training is often the first thing people sacrifice when life gets busy.
And the problem is that movement is actually one of the things that helps regulate stress. I know, again, I can completely resonate with that. So when that disappears, the pressure starts building without an outlet of that pressure.
Then sleep starts getting compromised, late nights working, checking emails late, trying to catch up.
And once sleep starts to become inconsistent, everything else gets harder. Decision making becomes harder, emotional regulation becomes harder, and most importantly, discipline becomes harder.
And eventually, everything becomes reactive. You're not operating with structure anymore, you're just responding to whatever the day throws at you. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they're burnt out is trying to force discipline. They think the answer is pushing harder, more productivity, more structure.
But discipline doesn't exist in isolation, so it depends heavily on the energy that you've got.
Exactly. You can't build a disciplined training routine when someone's running on 4 hours of sleep and constant stress. The body simply doesn't have the capacity.
And the same can be said for mentality. So when someone's exhausted, the brain's in survival mode. So they're not thinking strategically, they're just thinking about how to get through the day.
So before you talk about discipline, you have to talk about energy.
And once energy starts improving, something else interesting happens. So discipline suddenly becomes much easier. This is actually one of the reasons why we built the Empowered Edge. Because most people try to fix burnout by attacking the wrong layer. They try to change everything at once.
But the real solution is rebuilding the foundations in the right order.
So the way that we think about it is going through 4 stages. So 1, restore energy. 2, rebuild structure. 3, create clarity. And finally 4, define direction.
Energy comes first, because when someone's exhausted, even the best strategy won't stick.
And once energy improves, structure becomes easier to implement. Things like routines, habits, and consistency.
And once someone has both energy and structure, something else starts happening.
Clarity. Their thinking becomes less reactive and they start seeing their life more objectively again.
And from there, they can start making better long-term decisions.
So if someone listening to this recognises themselves in what we're describing, where should they start?
I'd actually recommend starting with 3 very simple resets. First, sleep. Not necessarily more sleep immediately, but more consistent sleep, going to bed and waking up at roughly the same time.
The second is daily movement, but not intense training, so just consistent movement. Walking, light training, anything that gets the body out of a static state. The third reset is something people often avoid, and that's reducing commitments.
Burnout often comes from trying to sustain too many priorities at once.
And sometimes the most productive thing someone can do is temporarily simplify their life.
Most people don't need to completely rebuild their life from scratch.
They just need to restore the foundations that modern life slowly erodes.
And when those foundations come back, energy, structure, clarity, performance usually follows naturally.
And that's exactly why we're exploring that through this podcast.